Okay guys, you must know the background of the game. Spec Ops The Line give us a landscape where Dubai is buried in the sandstorm. Meanwhile, the Colonel John Conrad from the 33rd Battalion of US Army was returning to home. Meanwhile, the storm struck and he got stuck in the storm, in the sandstorm, and he is lost. Now US Army sends three commanders or three commandos of 33rd Battalion named Captain Martin Walker, Lieutenant Alfonso, uh, Lieutenant Alfonso Adams, Lieutenant Alfonso Adams, Captain Walker, and a soldier John Lugo. In this game, you will play as the Captain Walker, and your mission is to find Colonel John Conrad. They are sent for the inspection and analysis of the area. So the game does not directly start from the beginning, it starts from the middle, a scene where they are flying helicopters and they are firing at other helicopters. He keeps searching for the signal, but when they reach the final destination, they see that the Daniel is already dead and all of that was a trap. But somehow they survive from the attack of the enemies. It was all a trap of enemies, but they can survive. After the crash of helicopter, the game starts in the flashback where the Captain Walker is going in the desert and he receives a radio call from an unknown person which tells that he has imprisoned Daniel, which is a CIA agent. Captain Walker investigates the city or inspects the city to trace the signals, but due to the sand, he falls from a very large and tall building.
Son of a bitch! Shit!
जिसकी वजह से वो
Further on in the game, he finds a lot of soldiers to be dead, and the Captain Walker finds a radio and he receives some broadcast which he believes to be Colonel Conrad. Captain Walker starts finding the location of John Walker and traces the signal. He meets an enemy officer and asks him the broadcasting location. On his guidance, he reaches a building and he did not found the Colonel John Conrad, but a different person, and the Lugo fires him and that person to death. So that means all of that was a trap. When they realize it is a trap, they think that there is a high chance of enemy attack due to the trap, and they take their helicopters and try to escape from the building, and that is how the game reaches to the point where it had actually started. In the beginning, we see they were taking helicopters and fighting with the enemies which had done all of that trap to murder the Delta Force 3-man team. When the Captain Walker comes back to the senses after the helicopter crash, he receives a radio call from the Lugo and he says that his life is in danger. He traces the location of Lugo, but he finds a lot of civilians, but he could not save the life of the Lugo.
भेज देता है और खुद पीछे रह जाता
Somehow
है
he
जिसकी
founds
वजह
the
से
location
एडम भी
of
मर जाता है।
Colonel
वॉकर बंदा जो
Conrad,
देखते
but
हैं
when he
जॉन
goes
कॉनरैड
inside, the
पिक्चर
Adams
बना
is
रहे
left
एकदम से
behind
जॉन वॉकर
and he
भी
also
ऊपरों से
dies.
गायब हो जाता है और आगे जो चेयर
When he
मोड़ने
reached
पर
the
देखते कि जॉन
reached the
कॉनरैड को
final
मार चुके हैं। जब से
destination
वॉकर
of
दुबई में आया था
Colonel
आहिस्ता
John
आहिस्ता उसका दिमाग
Conrad,
खराब होने लग गया था
he
क्योंकि वो
finds
जॉन
Colonel
कॉनरैड
John
को ढूंढना
Conrad
चाहता था और उसे जो
painting a
रेडियो
big
मिला था
wall,
आर्मी सोल्जर्स के पास से
but
वो रेडियो भी
suddenly
टूटा हुआ था। और इसके
the
बाद वॉकर
Colonel
अपने को भेज
Conrad
देता है और खुद
disappears
पीछे रह जाता
in
है,
front of
जिसकी
his
वजह से
eyes,
एडम भी मर
and
जाता
he
है।
is
और
just
वॉकर अब अंदर
astonished
देखता है कि
and
जॉन
left
कॉनरैड
in
पिक्चर
wonder.
बना रहे और एकदम से जॉन
Now
वॉकर की
at this
नज़रों से
point he
गायब हो
finds
जाता है और
out
आगे जा चेयर मोड़ने पर
he
देखते
figures
कि
out that he
जॉन
was in the
कॉनरैड कब का
psychosis
मर चुका है। और
and
जब
all
से
of
वॉकर
those
दुबई में
voices
आया था
were
आहिस्ता
coming
आहिस्ता उसका दिमाग
inside
खराब
of
होने लग गया था क्योंकि
him,
वो जॉन
and
कॉनरैड
the
को ढूंढना
radio
चाहता
from
था।
which he
और उसे जो
received
रेडियो मिला
the
था आर्मी
broadcast
सोल्जर्स
of
के पास से,
Colonel
वो रेडियो
Conrad
भी
was
टूटा हुआ
also
था।
a broken
और इसके
radio.
बाद वॉकर अपनी
So all of that happened due to his disorder, mental disorder. He also sees that Colonel Conrad is dead from the centuries. He found him dead on the chair. Because he wanted to find Colonel John Conrad, he started to become a psychological patient. In the ending, US sends a Falcon team to rescue Captain Walker. Okay guys, here's the story of Call of Duty for Modern Combat. After the fall of USSR, there's a weapons dealer called Imran Zakayev which forms the ultra-nationalist party. He reunites Soviet soldiers to fight against US. He also supports al-Assad in a Middle East country to divert the attention of US, and he succeeds. And a force called SAS, Special Air Service, it goes in the Middle East to find al-Assad, but they just found a recording loop running, and they find out it was just a trap. Meanwhile, in the SAS, there's a new soldier called Captain John Soap McTavish, or Captain McTavish. In this game, we play as Captain McTavish, and he gets training under Captain Price. Captain McTavish gets a mission to go on a ship which has a nuclear device, and his mission is to dispose that device. He goes on to the ship, but Russian helicopters down the ship, and he flees away at the right time. There's a spy Nikolai in Russia which gives information that al-Assad has a Russian nuclear device. The USMC attacks on the main palace of al-Assad, but meanwhile the nuclear bomb is triggered, and it is a unique scene in this video game, and there is no such scene in any other game. And the US SEALs are all killed in action. Nikolai informs that al-Assad cannot kill himself with nuclear bomb, and he is in Azerbaijan in his safe house. Captain Price reaches Azerbaijan in his safe house, and meanwhile Imran Zakayev calls al-Assad, and Captain Price knows all the game. To arrest Imran Zakayev, a giant team of USMC and SAS Special Air Services is created. They trace his son, but his son kills himself with his pistol. To take the revenge of his son's death, Imran Zakayev occupies a nuclear facility in Russia, while SAS reach there to liberate the nuclear facility from Imran Zakayev. But Imran Zakayev fires 6 nuclear missiles from the facility. But the SAS goes into the facility and aborts the missiles from the computers, because if it hits, it will cause 4 million casualties. In the command room, he sees Imran Zakayev is running in a truck. They follow him in their car, while a helicopter destroys the bridge with a blast. There is also an oil tanker which gets exploded, and everyone is really injured. Zakayev comes out to kill the injured soldiers, but he sees Captain Price and Captain John McTavish as dead, but they are not. So that's how the Imran Zakayev comes to an end. Russia announces this accident as a nuclear test, And that's how all of that is covered up. Perhaps true love is always one sided, and some truths are better never told. Senua's sacrifice is the story of a girl which goes through psychosis after the death or martyrdom of her man called Dillian, which is a warrior. When Senua is a child, her father tells her that she is dark, and due to her darkness, her mother has died, which she believes to be true.
You cursed me with your own madness. I was just a child. You created this darkness! You created this darkness so you could hide behind it!
When she grows up, she finds her love Dillian, and after some days, there is an attack in his village, and a lot of people die, and she thinks that it is due to her. Eventually, her man Dillian is martyred in a war, and she thinks it is due to her darkness, and she goes through an extreme anxiety, an extreme form of anxiety and psychosis. And that psychosis is explained or depicted from the gameplay combat, and it is only possible in the games. It is not these incidents. He becomes a warrior and fights for the soul of the Dillian, and there are voices which comes from her mind, within from her mind, and they say fight for Dillian. So she fights for the soul of Dillian. She fights with the monsters, the gods, and the horrible kind of species.
Has to fight him. Fight! Fight for Dillian.
And she has an enemy called Hela, and she always follows Hela, and she wants to reach the kingdom of Hela. And in the ending of game, she reaches the kingdom of Hela and fights with her warriors and with the soldiers of Hela. And meanwhile, she becomes extremely injured. When she reaches close enough to kill Hela, Hela takes her with sword which passes into her chest and passes to the second side in her back. In the dying moments, the Dillian comes in the flashback and teach her the importance of the loss and the importance of love. It is better to have been loved and lost than to never have been loved. Yeah, it's better. It's better to love and lose. Oh, so let's see it here. After the death of Senua, we came to know that the Hela was a reflection of Senua herself. And then there is a scene where Senua throws the skull of Dillian into the ocean, and all the darkness goes away, and now it's the rising sun after the dark night, and there is brightness everywhere, which means Senua was fighting herself, and now her past is dead. Her psychosis has been ended, and now it's a bright day. Her death means the death of her past. So I hope it's easy enough to understand this such kind of complex ending.
I learned the hard way to not be afraid of death, Senna. Because a life without loss is one without love. You turn your back on death, and all you can see is the shadow that it casts. The longer you hide from it, the longer the shadow grows until all you
emerge from this magic, like a wave from the ocean. Do not mourn the waves, the leaves, and the clouds. Even in darkness, the wonder and the beauty of this world never leaves us. It is always there, waiting to be seen again.